remember I was going to lean on my own understanding and go to my mother-in-law's and take her a flyer to give to my wife. But at that time, I remember that the Lord had prompted in my heart that He was going to give me back my kids. Because I just wanted to see my kids. I hadn't seen them in 3 months. And I remember the following week, we were going to go pick up my check at my mom's house in Huntington Park. And when we went to go pick up my unemployment check, my kids were right there. God was true to His word, to His promise. My kids were little. They saw me and they were all happy. And I just knew that God was real, because when He says something, He's going to come through.
That's right.
You know, and then I remember she came back in my life and she wanted to serve the Lord, and we got married. And I remember God's favor. It was just an unbelievable thing. Like I just wanted to serve God with my whole heart, you know, because I was happy that I wasn't a drug addict anymore. I was happy that He gave me back my kids. I was happy that even my kid's mom at the time wanted to serve the Lord. And God was just using, you know, I graduated the home and went into the entry, and Pastor made he told my wife to move into the property because they owned a big old property there. And then we began to serve the Lord. And then in 2007, after the World Conference there in Los Angeles, I remember that my brother Jerry, he was going to move out here to Ontario around that time, and then he was going to leave our house, and we didn't want to move out of the property because we're living on Victor Arch property. But so he wanted it. He goes, hey, you can have the house and this and that. But I didn't want to move because I love being around the people of Victory Arch and the ministry. I live with my pastor, and I didn't want to leave there. So I told him, I had asked my pastor, we got this house, what do we do? He goes, I don't know, bro, you got to pray and ask and see what God says. And then I remember that God put it in my heart to start a Spanish home. And I remember we started the Spanish home, and God began to move, and then God began to bring men, and there was a time we reached 17 men. You know, and He blessed us with the band, and we were doing so good. And then we started running a Spanish church. And God began to use our lives. My wife and I, she didn't speak a lot of Spanish, but I spoke Spanish. I didn't read Spanish, but God taught me how to read Spanish. But then I remember I had like a really, really good job, and I made a lot of money. I mean, I had a 6-figure income, and I didn't even graduate high school. But it was just the favor of God on our lives, and my kids were blessed, and everything was going good. Amen. But then I remember that God would always prompt me in my heart to quit my job. But I didn't want to let go of my job. And see, that's a mistake that many of us can make when God says, listen, you got to do this, we have to be obedient to that. So I didn't listen to that to the point where God had to close this company to get my attention. And this happened in 2013. But during the time when that business was closing, I remember going to my wife and saying some things to her, and then she just like flipped it around on me, and she betrayed me. And I was in church, and then I began to get high, and I began to the point where one day I found out some things that she was doing, and it really I had lost my job. I had just bought this, God had blessed me with a big old home. And I remember that I felt like nobody understood me. I tried to talk to my pastor, he didn't understand. And then I ended up using drugs again, going back after 11 years, throwing away everything that God had given me, taking for granted everything that God had blessed me with. And then what I did, after a period of time, being high 5 days, I lit my own house on fire.
Wow.
I lit it on fire, and I remember hurting my kids, you know, making them feel like, what did Dad just do to us? He bought us this house. Of course, it was God, right? And he because of my selfishness, because I wanted to be selfish, and I didn't understand certain things, and I was blaming, and I was putting the finger on people instead of being responsible and getting back on my knees and crying out to God and letting Him work it out. And so then I remember I did that, and I came here. I came to Victory Arch, Pomona for a week, and then they picked me up. The cops picked me up right there on 7th and Gary, where the old church used to be. Pastor Alfredo was the director at the time. He goes, hey, bro, don't worry, man, I got you. If they try to arrest you, I'll be around the corner, and you could run over there. I go, yeah, he's lying. They're going to take me to jail. He wasn't about to get me out of there. He knew what was going to happen. But I needed to go to jail.
Wow.
I remember I went to jail, And I was in a one-man cell for 11 and a half months.
Come on.
Feeling sorry for myself. The crime that I committed and hurting my kids weren't willing to talk to me. And I remember crying out to God, and I would get in the corner of the cell where nobody could see me and just cry every day for 2-3 weeks.
Wow.
But you know what? Let me tell you this. In God, I could feel His Spirit say, "Are you done crying out, son? Get up." And I began to get into the Word, and I began to cry out to God. I began to get my relationship with God again. And sometimes God has to do that. He has to separate you. He allows your own sin, right, your own mistakes, to come and separate you so He can get a hold of you. And sometimes you can feel lonely, but I'll tell you one thing. When God says He'll never leave you and He'll never forsake you, it's so true.
Amen. That's right.
And I remember there being in that cell for 11 and a half months and then crying out to God and saying, "God, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to go to prison. God, my kids need me." Yeah, but I didn't care that my kids needed me when I did the crime when I committed the crime that I committed, because we're selfish sometimes. But through all that, when I ended up going to prison, and in prison He kept me, right? He kept me. I was around lifers, and you're around murderers and all kind of stuff. But I went into the chapel there, and I began to get a hold of God. They were even going to deport me one time.
Wow.
Because I wasn't born in this country. And I remember INS coming a month before I got out, right? And I cried out to God, and He was telling me that if my mom was an American citizen, that I would be able to stay in this country. And my mom was an American citizen at the time when I was 16 years old. So that saved me, but it was God's plan all along, because God knew what I was going to do, but yet in His sovereignty and His love, He knew that I needed to be here where I'm at today. And I remember that the day before I was going to get out, they took the hold off, and then I knew I was coming home. Pastor Jerry, my son Raymond, and I think Leo was there too. I think Leo was there. They picked me up from prison, and we did a job, and I was I was happy. But what happens is sometimes with us is that we tend to be selfish again. We get selfish again. When God begins to do great things again, He begins to give us back, and then we get selfish again. We take our eyes off of Him. And so then I remember I fell back again. I fell again after getting out of prison, saying I was never going to use drugs after 3 years, and I ended up using drugs again. And then I ended up going to Victory Outreach Westlake. I stood there for 7 months, right? Got restored, and then I fell with a woman after that.
Wow.
And I started using drugs again. And that's what led me to Victory Outreach of Pomona, because I had to get out of LA. And I remember coming to Victory Outreach of Pomona on the 26th of August of the year 2019, I'm sorry. 1919, that's
Boy, you're like dead.
2019, and I remember calling Leo. He picked me up after 4 days of being stuck, homeless, and he goes, "Bro, come on, let's go to the home." I didn't want to come to the home. I was supposed to come a week before, but I said, "Nah, I'm not going back to the home. I'm not going to do it. I've already done the home too many times. The home's not for me.
Hello.
I'm tired of the home, man. I got to deal with all these guys. I got to get up there. No, I'm not going to do it."
Rudy.
But then God,
Rudy.
right? You can't go against God's will. God's always going to have His way in our lives.
Amen.
But you know what? I'm grateful now. I'm grateful that I came to the home. I'm grateful that day, because I remember calling Ralph, and Ralph was making sure that, you're coming in the home, right, bro? You're going to follow the rules, and you're going to do what you're asked, and and he was telling me, and I was like, "Yes, Ralph, yes." But I've known Ralph for years. I've seen him around for a long time, but it was God's plan. See that? It was God's plan that He knew exactly who He was going to put in front of me, and that's Brother Ralph.
Wow.
And that's why when I tell you guys, listen, we have a great home director. We really do. I'm not saying that because he's here, but I'm saying it because it's the truth.
I know.
And you guys are a part of that. You guys are a part of what God wants to do in this home. You guys are a part of what you're going to see this home go from the 8 to, like he said, 18, maybe even more. Maybe God's going to open up even a second ministry.
Yeah, come on.
I believe that. I believe that.
Yes.
And so the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. He kept telling me one thing. He kept telling me, "This is the last time, Godfrey. No more.
Yes.
This is the last time. And I began to believe those words. I began to take those words and letting them take root in my heart. Forgetting the former things of the past. We got to forget our past. Our past has nothing to do with our future. And if you begin to just let God move in your hearts, move in your life, begin to be obedient. The key is obedience.
Amen.
If you're obedient, God can use you.
Yeah.
God can take you places. God can, because you know why? Because if God says, listen, I need you to go to Africa, you're going to say, yes, Lord, I'm going to go to Africa. And this just starts with just simple obedience.
Yes.
Come on,
yes.
man.
And if you start being obedient to every command, not question it, but just say yes and amen. Those two words will take you a long way.
That's right.
Those two words will save you a lot of headache.
That's
Those
right.
two words will save you from being back in the world using drugs again.
Amen.
Amen.
And just let God do what He's doing already.
Amen.
Today we had a powerful day.
Yeah.
Come on, and it was only us.
Yeah.
It was only us, but God's Spirit was with us.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
God's Spirit was with us, and He continues to be with us.
Amen.
Man, it's beautiful to see a smile on David's face.
Yes.
Beautiful to see that Brother Jonathan is here, and Brother Chris. When the enemy tried to take them out just last week. But God saved you guys. He
Come on.
restored you guys. He kept you guys. He did whatever it took to keep you here. Why? Because of the call of God on your life, Jonathan. And so just fight, man. We got to fight. But you know what the beautiful thing is? We can fight together. Amen?
That's right. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.